Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So continuing with our Python for data science playlist, in this video we are going to focus on Python list. So what are Python list, what are nested list, what are list of lists, how we can access data from different lists, right? And then we would also be looking at slicing list, like how we can give ranges in list, right? How we manipulate lists, like basically when we create a list, so how we can replace, extend, delete values from the list. And at the end we are also going to talk something, a bonus point, how to correctly copy a list, right? Okay, so let's start with it, right? So Python lists are a data structure used to store multiple data points in one location. So for example, yesterday in our previous video, we learned that a variable is used to store a data, right? But what if you want to store a multiple values of data at one position, right? So for example, list of marks of all the students in your class. So how do you store it? Will you store it, person 1 scored 85, person 2 scored 83 and something like that? Or is it better to store the entire thing in one list, right? So that is why this Python lists are useful. How do we create a list, right? So to create a list, or to identify whether this is a list or not, look for square brackets. So square brackets, these different numbers separated by comma, it is a list, right? So if I run this, so this is a list, right? So it has 5 different values. Okay, how to store the list as a variable? So basically, so this entire list can be referenced just like a variable, right? So x is equal to 2. So here the variable x was referencing to a value called 2. So here we can do the same thing with a list as well. So this is a list and we can store it in a name of variable, right? So for example, marks, right? So when I run this, it will be having, so marks is a list which has these different values, right? Now values inside the list can have any data type, so integer, float, boolean, string, etc. So it doesn't matter. So here we saw that these are different integers. Let's go ahead and store some float values as well, right? So these are float, basically real numbers which has integers as well as decimal part. Then this is basically a list where values are string, right? So again, no problem with that. Also, up till this, we were only storing a list. So for example, this list has all the values of integer data type. This is all the values of float data type, all the values of string data type, right? But we can also have a combination of any of the data types that we learned, right? So it can be a combination of, let's say, we want to store, okay, so our channel Everyday Data Science, how many subscribers are there and what is the average daily watch time in hours or something like that, right? Just making things up. So Everyday Data Science, so this is a string, this is an integer, this is a float value. So like if I run this, no problem at all, right? Now the great thing about list is that you can even store a list inside a list, and this is called nested list. So for example, let's say like we want to know, so Sachin is a cricketer and what was his score in the first 2 games that he played, right? So this is so this entire thing, so the first square bracket and the last square bracket, this denotes that, okay, Sachin comma 125, this is a list which also stores another list with 2 different values, 100 and 25, right? So this is a nested list, right? Now similarly, list of lists, right? So for example, in a particular one day international cricket match, what was the top 3 scores by the batsmen, right? So Sachin scored 150, Kohli 112, Dhoni 76, right? So this is a list of lists. So this is one list, Sachin 150, Kohli 112, another list, and list number 3 is Dhoni 76. And I have stored this in a bigger list, the first the square brackets denoted by green. So this is a list of list, right? So if I see what is the data type, and we know, right, how to know a data type of any variable in Python, we use the function type, right? So type scores, so this will return a data type of list. Okay, so once we have a list, how do we access data from the list, right? So if you are given a list, you just created a list, how do you access data? Because as a data scientist, you will have to deal with data, right? Okay, so before knowing how to access data, we should know and be familiar with what is indexing in list, right? So basically when we write, right, something like marks, so a list with variable name marks, and these are the values. So what it is basically, so at index 0, the value is 84, at index 1, 93, 244, 378, and index 4 is 22. So the list index always starts with 0, and it is, this term is called 0 indexing. So basically when I write something like this, it is, in a list called marks, at position 0 the value stored is 84, at position 1 893, and similarly, right? So when I say get me the third value from this list, right? So third value, so third value is 44. So third value will have the index what? 0, 1, 2. So 2, right? So to get the value from the nth position of the list, you just write the name of the list and square brackets and -1, because that will be the index, right, from the left. So for example, when I say, third element from the list marks, so marks, third element is index 2, right? So 0, 1, 2, right? So if I run this, this will return 44. Also here in this case, we are counting from left to right. If you count right to left, so the index starts -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, right? So when we do marks -1, right? So marks -1 should return the last value of this list called marks, 22, right? So if I run this, 22. Why this is useful? So suppose you are in a position where you don't know what is the length of the list, right? So even, if I say, if you don't know that you can access the last value using -1 or negative index, if I say what will be like the index of 22, right? So you will count from left 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? But let's say you know that right now you don't know the length of the list, right? So your list can have 100 elements, 200 elements, 500 elements, or it changes with time, or the code that you have written, it does not matter, right? But when you do list of -1, whatever be the length of your list, it does not matter. -1 means the last value, right? So you see the importance of counting backwards and -1 or negative indexing, right? So count from front or backwards, it gives you the same result, right? So similarly, right? So -1 was basically marks -1 index is last element, or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I do the same thing, so equal to sign is basically you need to check whether your value from the left is equal to the right, and if it is true, it will return true. If it is not, it will return false, right? So if I do the same, it returns true. So it means whether you count from the left or from right does not matter, right? Okay, so when you need to return the first value, you create, you write the name of the list and the index 0, and you want the last value, you write the name of the list and -1, right? So from this list, the first value is 84 and last value is 22, right? First value is 84, last value is 22. Okay. Also, by accessing this data, we can also do arithmetic like we studied in the previous video, right? So we can do 2 plus 3 in Python, but we can also do, so marks 0 means the first value from the list called marks, and marks 1 means the second value from the list called marks. So the first value is 84 and the second value is 93. If you add these, what is the result? 7, 177, right? So if I run this, it should return me 177, and we can do the arithmetic as well. Okay. Now, up till now, we were only looking at a list, like a normal list, right? What if we have a list of lists, right? So scores, right? So this is a list of list. So when I do scores 0, so what it means is from the bigger list scores, what is the value stored at index position 0. So what is stored at index position 0? This list, right? Sachin, comma 150. So if I run this, it is going to return this, right? Now when I do scores square bracket 0 square bracket 0, what does this mean? So basically scores square bracket 0, up till this point it says the first value from the bigger list, and then once we have this, then from this list what is the value stored at the 0th index. So what should it return? Sachin, right? So that is how you access list of list. So you first know the index of the inner list, and then from that index you try to get over like which index you want the value of. So for example, if I ask you what will this return, right? Scores 2 1, it will return 76. Why it will return 76? So the first thing it will do is scores 2. So index 0 1 2. So scores 2 is Dhoni, comma 76, and then scores 2, after we have scores 2, then square bracket 1 means, so once we have Dhoni and 76, so Dhoni is now index 0 and 76 is index 1. So index 1 is 76. So understand, this is how we access list of list. Okay. So once we access, now we can also, do slicing of the list. So basically, up till now, we were only selecting a certain value, right? So one value at a time. But what if we want a smaller subset of a large set, right? So that function is called slicing, right? And to do that, we use a colon, right? To give the range of index you want values from. Again, let's look at this marks list. What if I want the second to the fourth element, right? So second element is index 0 1. So the second element is this and the fourth element is this, right? So if I write marks square bracket 1 colon 3, so range 1 to 3, will it return second to fourth element? Let's run this and see, right? So it returned only the second element and the third element. It didn't return the fourth element, even though we mentioned that the index we want it till index 3. So index 0 1 2 3. So we wanted this and this, but it is only returning this and this, right? Why? The thing is that when you write something like this, like start value and the end value is not included. So the correct way to get the second to fourth element should be, you need to write marks index 1 to 4. So index 1 is 0 1 2 3 4. So in plain English, Python will understand it as get the values from the list marks from index 1 to 4 but excluding 4. So index 1 2 3 exclude 4. So 93 44 78, right? So now we have the second, third and fourth element, right? So just to note, when we write a range like start colon end, start is included and the end is not included, right? So it is excluded. Okay. Now let's say we want to get somewhat lazy, right? So if you don't write anything, right? So for example, here we didn't mention any start, right? So we just write marks square bracket colon 3. So what it means is start from the very beginning count from left and go to index 3 but exclude value at 3, right? So in this, start from the very beginning. So 0, 1, 2, 3, but exclude this, right? Exclude 3. So 84, 93, 44 should be the answer in this case, right? Similarly, when we don't include the end part, right? So this means from the marks subset a list from index 2 up till the end. So index 2 is 0, 1, 2. So index 2, 3, 4, like up till the end. So 44, 78, 22, right? So if I run this, 44, 78, 22, right? So that means, to summarize, if you don't specify the start index, Python figures out that you want to start your slice at the very beginning of your list. And if you don't specify the end index, the slice will go to all the way to the last element of your list. Okay. Now, how do you slice list of list? Again, very similar stuff. So when I write scores 1, so what values are there at index 1 of the bigger list? Kohli, 112, 23, right? So this is there. Now let's say I want, so what was the scores made by the batsman named Kohli in the 2 matches, right? So scores 1, 1, colon, right? So what is this? So scores 1 is this, and then I write 1 colon. So index 0, 1 and 1 till end. So it should return 112 and 23. So yeah. Okay, let's move forward. Once we are able to access data and slice data, what if we want to change some values in it, or add some values, delete some values, replace some values from the list? We can even do that. Okay, so let's again take the marks list, like marks of 5 different students in your class. Okay, so let me run this. Now let's suppose by mistake you entered that, okay, the 5th person's marks was not 22, it was 32, right? So the 20, like the last person was, how do we access the last person? By -1. Or you can also write marks square bracket 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4th index, right? And you assign it the new value 32, and now when I run this and try to get like, okay, so what is the updated marks list? So it will have this updated value, right? So initially it was 22, now it is 32. So that is how you replace values in a list. But here you can only do one at a time. What if you want to do multiple values, like, you want to replace multiple values in a list at a time? So in this case, let's say your first and second student value marks were interchanged. So by mistake, you wrote the marks of first student in second and second student in first. So marks 0 to 2. What does this mean? Start from the 0th index, go till 2, but exclude 2. So first element and the second element, right? So index 0 and 1. And you assign the values as a list 93 and 84, right? And when I run this, so now marks is interchanged, right? So this is how you replace. Now let's say you want to add the 6th friend marks, right? So let's say that friend scored 10, right, in the exam. So if I do marks plus 10, what it is going to return me? Right? Let me run this and let's see what it is going to return. Okay, again, we learned about errors yesterday as well in the previous video. You will find the link in the description. It says can only concatenate list to list. Marks is a list, right? Marks is a list. This is an integer. You cannot concatenate list with an integer. So how do you do that? You need to specify that, okay, this is also a list with one element. So when you concatenate list and list, it is going to be there. Okay. How do we delete an element from the list? We use the function del. Okay. So here it seems like it removed two elements, but it is not the case. So when we did marks plus 10, it is just, displaying the values. But actually marks only had 5 elements up till now. And when we remove the last element, -1, so this element was removed and we are left with 4 different elements, right? Okay. Now let's go to the bonus thing, right? How do we correctly copy a list, right? So for example, let's say this is a list with 3 different elements, right? 10, 20 and 30. Let me run this. So 10, 20 and 30. Now what I do is B is equal to A, right? I do B is equal to A. I run this. Now, so actually when I do B is equal to A, let me, just display what is B. So B is again, same 10, 20, 30. Let me change the second element, or basically the third element, right? So element at second index 2. So 0, 1, 2. So index 2 to from 30 to 32, right? So I do that and let me display B. So 10, 20, 32. Now I didn't change anything in A, right? What I did was, there was a list called A. I just did B is equal to A and then changed the third element, right? But when I run A, it is also changing, right? So now why is this happening? So actually what is happening is that when we write A is equal to something, a list, A stores the address of your computer memory which has values 10, 20, 30. So when we write A or a variable is equal to something, it is basically, this is referencing to the memory in your computer where these values are stored, right? Now once you do B is equal to A, now B also has, so now when you write B equal to A, B also stores the same address of your computer memory. So since it stores the same address of your computer memory, if you change B, you are changing the values in the address. And so since A also references to the same address, we see that the list A is also changed. So remember, this is, so if you want to make a copy of a list, this is not the way to go. So how to do that? There are 2 ways we can do this. The first method is, let's say we had the list, again same list 10, 20, 30. You can write, instead of writing B is equal to A, you write B is equal to list of A, right? So now B will be referencing to a new address in a computer memory, right? And then once you change the third element to 32, the A will remain same, but B will change because you change the second element, the third element, right? There is another method by using slicing. So when we remembered that, okay, so if we get lazy and don't mention anything, so from beginning to end, again same list, B is equal to A, square brackets, colon. So we are slicing all the elements out of the list A and then changing the third element. And once I run this, it is again going to have, right? So B is changed but not A. In this case, B and A both were changing, right? So yeah, this is how we correctly copy a list. Okay. So I hope this video was useful and you got to know learn a lot about list, Python list, how we can, manipulate data, create list, how to identify list, how to, copy a list correctly, how to add, delete, replace values inside a list, how to, what are list of lists, nested list, how to access data from list of list, etc. Right? So I hope this video was useful. Let me know in the comment section if it was, and I will see you in the next tutorial.